evening. It is Sunday, the 5th of July, and it's time for another edition of the Ken and Glenn Show with a guy named Scott. And welcome once again, the stars of our show. Here's Ken and Glenn and me, a guy named Scott. Hey, guys.
Scott.
Happy 5th, Scott.
We got to
Good to be
change.
with you.
We got to
Happy
change.
5th, Ken.
Happy 5th to you too, Glenn.
Was it a good holiday for you, gentlemen?
It was unbelievable.
I'm learning how to work the box. Ken's there.
Brady,
Hey, Scott.
What did you gentlemen do for July the 4th?
Oh, hey, we saw some fireworks. And honestly,
I thought they had outlawed all the shows. No?
not in Marion, Ohio. They didn't. They were not allowing people onto the fairgrounds, which they normally do, which is where they set them off from the fairgrounds. But yeah, they shot them off. There were cars parked on every street around. It was insane. It was insane.
Nice.
Yeah, we found a perfect spot. It was awesome. Yeah. How about you?
And crazy in Las Vegas, Scotto?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just saw come across right before we went on that, I-15 is the interstate that runs from Vegas to Los Angeles. And they're saying there's a 13-mile backup tonight on I-13 or I-15 because so many people from Southern California were spending the weekend here in Vegas. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, what happens next. But yeah, a lot of fireworks displays. Tammy and I did not get out in it. We could kind of go up on our upstairs balcony deck and see some of it. And we watched Hamilton on Disney Plus.
Oh, Disney Plus. Yes. My mom has been talking about that. How was that and seeing it on the tube?
I would give it 8 out of 10. And I know that some people will be aghast at that. If we had seen it on Broadway and then to recreate it and to see it a second time, I think it would probably just blow you away. But it was fantastic, but it's not like being there. You know what I mean? But I thought with the staging and with everything, they did a really marvelous job of making you feel like you were in the theater. And
so is this an experience I want to have? Because yes. Mom was wanting to do it this week.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be very, very enjoyable.
If I may say, you're looking a little trim here, Scott. You've got your chiseled chin and a profound absence of neck, and it looks like maybe you've been working out or something. Tell us about that, or have you?
Glenn, the check is in the mail. I hope my friend JJ Virgin is watching because she has committed that she's going to get me in the best shape of my adult life.
Wow.
It means I'll look really good in the casket.
Oh, jeez. That's all that matters, right?
That's just lovely.
Hey.
By the way, interesting segue. Tonight's show is a discussion of caskets and current pricing.
Yeah. How about you? What'd you guys do, Glenn? What
I also lost weight.
Oh my God!
What do you think of that?
Cow.
It's Mr. Clean.
Wow! Wow!
I saved that for you. I hit it with the ball cap so that you would get the full reveal
on
the show. So last week I had hair. Yeah. And this week no hair. And it's interesting. I've wanted to do it my entire life.
Really?
But I can't because it's a career destroyer, right? You can't do it. I'm saying, well, it's a career destroyer if you're locked into a series because they are purchasing your appearance.
Sure.
But we haven't worked since March, and we go back here in about 5 weeks. And I thought, wait a minute, this is my window.
Yeah.
This is my window where I can do it without any kind of problem. My facial hair for the show is a 7-day beard. My hair, roughly, it looks, based on the difference in length, to be about 2 weeks, maybe 2.5. So I've got 2.5 weeks with nothing happening career-wise. And if you're ever going to do it, dude, this is the time to do it. And, normally, even in our off season, we can't do it because invariably someone's going to call and they want you to look the way they're accustomed to having you look. But right now, there's really not any filming going on. And I thought, dude, this is your time. And it coincides with Independence Day. So this haircut is less than 24 hours old.
Well, in Broadway as well. We were talking Broadway. I mean,
what do you mean?
Annie, you're
sure, Daddy Warbucks?
Yeah.
Of course, baby. I'm Daddy Warbucks. So do you guys want me to do the show like this? Or you want me to go back to this kind of thing?
No, man, let it fly.
Yeah, exactly.
Let freedom ring, baby. Let it ring.
All right, here it is.
No, they don't build those beautiful domes in to put something over top of them. All right. So.
Hey, I like Carrie Lynn Carter's idea.
Oh, Carrie wants me to get a head tat now. That's funny. Because, you always wonder, you're going to have an egg-shaped head. You're going to, I haven't looked this way since I was a child, like a newborn.
Wow.
I shopped. I said, Care, see if you can find somewhere online where they're selling amniotic fluid so I can do a full rebirth. Just,
Hey,
let me just cover my bald head with amniotic fluid, and we'll take it from there.
So Glenn FaceTimes me or calls me yesterday and he's like, hey, can I FaceTime you? And I said, sure. And so he FaceTimes me and he's like, I gotta show you something. And I'm by the way, when I answer the FaceTime, I'm like looking at his ceiling and I'm like, you there? And he goes, yeah, I gotta show you something. And I go, all right. So then he goes, boom, and he's like, check it out. And I'm like, oh my God. So I get Jill and my 10-year-old daughter, Abigail. I go, hey, Glenn wants to show you something. Glenn, should I tell him what Abigail said?
Sure.
She said, he goes, do you see? And she's like, what? And he goes, I shaved my head. And she goes, oh, I thought you were already bald.
Yeah, she goes, you've always been bald. You've always, because she loves to sound like this. And she goes, you've always been bald. At which point I informed her that the relationship between us was over. It's the Scott McCain.
Yeah, we're done.
See, now there's a great idea. You need the cowboy star on the side.
Yeah, I saw Gary Jerome's comment.
Yeah.
He wanted you to put a cowboy star on the side. Well,
hey, by the way, I think it's this time every week at 8:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
You're going to give him the warning this week.
We do this thing called promote and help other people.
Oh, it's a new one this week.
Well, you're supposed to roll with it. Like
we're rolling. We're rolling.
Of course,
this is Scott and I rolling right
on
now.
Our extensive show rundown.
You guys not get the show. What the heck? All right, so you guys were so kind to jump on with me and Justin Myers, and he has the whole thing he's putting together for Operation Care Package. Do you guys recall that?
You bet. Of course.
And we promised, well, Glenn and I did. We said we would mention it to everybody. Operation Care Packages, Justin Myers putting together all these care packages to send to our troops. And they're I think all of them are overseas. So
and Ken, tell them a little about Justin's background, and Scott can chime in because he knows all about the Captain Phillips days and all of this, but it ties in with the pirating that our ships are exposed to, and what Justin's background was with that.
Well, so Justin was was in the Navy, and he was on a ship that was actually attacked by pirates, which just sounds funny even saying, but it's a real thing.
Well, not just pirates, but foolish pirates, because they didn't bother to check up and see who the gunnery sergeant was that day.
Right.
And it turns out that Justin was the one with the
shooter
in hands, and apparently young Justin doesn't tend to miss. So you might want to see if they've got a sharpshooter on deck before you start trying to take over his ship.
No kidding. So I just wanted to mention that if you guys look, he's these packages he's putting together, and I don't remember everything he's putting in. Justin, if you want to put it in the comments.
I can tell you it's toilet paper, it's toothpaste, it's toothbrushes, it's underarm deodorant, it's beef jerky, it's magazines, it's books. It's just stuff that reminds them that they don't only have the company of their brethren that are by their side in the trenches or on deck out at sea, but that people from the homeland are thinking about them. And it is a conscious act of love to say, we're here, we appreciate you having our backs, and we have yours.
Amen. Dude, perfect.
You know, and so these packages are to sponsor a single package is $125. And I got to tell you, the original goal was 100. This was Justin's goal. And because Ken Walls and Scott and myself are all very much into the idea of why have any kind of self-imposed limitation with your thinking or your campaign. We're easily 10X guys. And so Ken jumped that number up from 100 to 1,000. He just said, you know, if we can do 100, why not 1,000? And I agree with him. And please know this, any contribution that you can make, 100% will go to that. And, and it is all appreciated. We don't appreciate more our bigger givers. We love our givers, period. So any amount you feel compelled to send into this, rest assured there won't be any dipping into it. We'll make sure that Justin gets it. We'll make sure that packages are sent to their intended destination. We love you and we thank you in advance.
That's awesome, dude. Thank you. And Justin just said, and for anybody that would like to donate actual items, reach out to Justin. There he is. Look him up. He's in the comments. Reach out directly to him. They're looking for toilet paper. They're looking for women's care products, whatever. I don't even know.
You can say the word tampon.
Oh,
you can,
God, no. You're not allowed to say that on air.
He said it when he was live with us.
Yes.
He did. I'm following Justin's lead. Look, here's the reality. The military doesn't keep nature from continuing. Right. So they're just participating from their standpoint, and clearly they need products just like men need products. And to me, it's a demonstration of thoroughness.
Yeah,
that's all.
And they're doing a great job. So I just wanted to take a second and a couple minutes here and give him a shout out, give the organization a shout out. Operation Care Package. I do know Brian Hess got involved. You guys know Brian. He had some people. One guy stepped up and donated something like $2,500, and for a business that's doing well, that could be a nice little write-off for you. And I mean, there's just been all kinds of I think it's around 10 grand that they've raised so far. So the goal is 125,000, obviously. So, or the equivalent of all the products. So I think it's awesome.
Gentlemen, with your blessing, can I roll this into just a little observation about money that I made years ago and the effect of being generous with money? We had a lunch just a couple of hours ago, because we do everything later. Our lunches are later, our dinners are later, and quite often our lunches become dinner, which is what we call dunch or dinner. And we often will have dunch at around 9 p.m. and we haven't eaten lunch. So we had this beautiful lunch out on the lake, and there was a lightning storm going, massive rain, and it was gorgeous because the deck, you're safe. And this young kid, he was 22 years old, and he was fresh out of college. And I asked him about his dream and what he wanted to do. And he said that he was going to return and go back to nursing school. And anyway, I want to just mention the idea of, from time to time, over tip somebody. Just over tip them if they were nice and they were helpful. I understand not doing it as a way of life if money is tight for you, but I have to tell you that the way we tip somebody is probably the greatest indicator of what it is we are ready to receive. And so it's fun to do that. And I left a tip for this kid, and I'm not being boastful in any way, shape, or form, but I left a tip for this kid that had him look at it and come rushing back outside to offer a heartfelt thank you so much. And then he goes, listen, if you're ever here, and it's like, well, yeah, I get it. I get it. He says, like, I want to be your way to just thank you. And you realize that you've really acknowledged his humanity, and that's the primary thing. Yeah. And so even if funds are tight in your life, I want to encourage you to take a day from time to time. Again, if funds are really tight, I understand if you can't do it on a regular basis, but set aside a time when you're extraordinarily generous to someone. Set aside a time to overtip someone, and especially if they were really good and they earned it. Yeah. Not just to throw money around.
Right.
Someone who was so warm and so engaging and so kind and so thorough. Give them something that says you're better than the rest. I don't mean you're a better human being. I'm saying you're doing a better job. You are better at what you're doing than the average person. Therefore, I'm not going to tip you as I would an average person. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you something that recognizes this. You know, your Taxi Terry guy, he must make a fortune, Scott. Does he make good money and tips? He must make.
Hey, Jason, great to see you from Australia. Terry does very well, Glenn, yes, and when I was walking this morning, I was listening to Jim Rohn, and he was telling a story about tipping, and his mentor told him, according to the story I was listening to, that the word tip came from the acronym to ensure promptness.
Yes.
Which means that sometimes we should give the tip at the beginning rather than the end. And I've tried that a couple of times, and it is absolutely amazing if you go in before, like you've got Tammy and I were getting engaged, or some other a business event or whatever. You go in ahead of time, and you tip the hostess, and you say where we're going to be seated, and you tip the server in advance, and it's amazing how they will hover and take care of you.
Sure.
Which ensures a better, it's better for them because they know up front. Tammy used to be a server years ago, and when she was a single mom, and she said it's really heartbreaking on the behalf of the server to give so much and work so hard, and then somebody leaves you a couple bucks on a $50 bill, there were times that she said that she went home and had to pay the babysitter more than she made that night, that she lost money by working.
And even lost money, by the way, this goes all the way back to the Reagan administration, when these changes first kicked in. And this is not me knocking an administration. I just remember that this was the time when tips started being treated differently in terms of them being taxed.
Sure.
And that servers had to claim, because, as an actor, when you're an actor in Los Angeles, everybody says, really? So you're an actor? What restaurant? and so all of us at some point have been waiters and waitresses. Yep. And what used to happen is we were required to claim 8%, but here's what's key. And I understand it averages out for sure, but 8% whether you made it or not. So what this means is, if you have a a table that is not cognizant of the significance, they don't really have an understanding of tipping, or they're just not habitual tippers, then what happens is it literally costs the server to wait on that table because they are claiming 8% of something they didn't make.
Yeah.
And it was required by law. So yes, I understand that it averages out, but for that individualized experience, that waiter is actually being charged to wait on those customers, which is not really what we had planned to talk about tonight, but so often we discover our topics. Let's go back to the military.
And Danny, Jason Bradshaw is on here that will know his name. Danny, he's a restaurateur based out of New York, and he Shake Shack is his, but he has a couple fine restaurants in New York, and now it's a no tipping policy. They just raised the prices, 20%, and the server gets paid 20%, but it's handled through the restaurant. There's no variation, and guess what? Everybody wants to work there. Every great server in New York is attracted to working there because that's taken out of the equation. You don't have to worry about getting stiffed. You don't have to worry about, and gosh, that's one of my fears is, you leave the restaurant. Gee, did I leave enough tip? Did I do the, how it is, you get involved, you get talking to people and you kind of sign the check and you're paying attention to something else. And that's one of my fears because I appreciate the good service so much. Glenn, I'm glad you brought that up. That's
well, I was tying it in with Justin because we're talking about contributing to a campaign.
Yeah.
And my note, the reason I brought it up, this certainly was not a discussion about waiters or about restaurants or even tipping. It's about the same thing in my video that I did the other day when I said that my talk was not about the coronavirus. I said that my talk was about consciousness. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. There is a consciousness of prosperity. Yeah. There is a consciousness of generosity. And I got to say to any of you that want to increase your money flow in your life, use this one simple formula. How do you wish to be treated financially? So here's what I want you to play along with me right now. I want you to roll swap. And I want you, before you tip the next waiter, again, provided they were nice. I'm not talking about handing large sums of money to people who didn't earn it and who had a nasty attitude. Mm-hmm. But if the person was a really warm presence and did their job and did it with a smile and you felt taken care of, then roll swap and be them.
Yeah.
And imagine what amount, if you were them, would make you smile when you opened up the bill. What amount would do that for you? And then let that be the amount. If you look and go, man, that would really rock my world, or that would bring a smile to my face. How about this one? That would even bring a rescripted ending to my otherwise rotten night.
Yeah.
What if you were the last table that somebody waited on and they had not had a good night, and then bam, you recognize their humanity. Flip that equation around, make it you, and you will treat other human beings much better across the board.
Totally agree. I do live streams about this exact topic all the time. So I think that it's unbelievably important. And I think, there's a lot of people that suffer from what's the word? I keep wanting to say the lack mentality, but that's not the word. When you suffer from, come on, somebody give me the word. When you're
lack of abundance, yeah.
And it's like the more that you get, I mean, I don't want to break all scriptural on, but it's scriptural. It's in the Bible. I mean, it's like the more you give, the more you will receive. I mean, it's just a principle.
Brian said,
I have an unless.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Want to hear the unless?
What's that?
I said I have an unless to add to that equation.
Sure.
The unless is unless you're giving to receive.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the receiving is a byproduct. It should never be the incentive.
Right.
Understand that it's a byproduct. And Scott talks about byproduct consciousness all the time in his program. Don't let that be your motive. Let your motive solely be because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
and love, and no other reason. But then you will create this understanding as you dig deeper into that and delve deeper and drill deeper, that it's the way it works. But that's not the reason you do it.
Right.
You do it because you're a love-centered human being and you want to treat others the way you want to be treated. I mean, it's great. So Justin, we got you back, and we will continue to announce. What do we have, Ken? Like 5 weeks, 6 weeks? What do we have?
I think sometime in August is when they're planning on shipping. Justin, if you're still on here, drop that in. I think it's the end of August is what him and Brian were talking about. So operationcarepackage.org takes you directly over to the GoFundMe page. Even if you have $5, and everybody has $5, if you have $5, throw $5 at it. It's a great cause, and you're gonna make you're gonna make somebody's night. September 1st is the ship date. You'll make somebody's day, night when they receive that package. Justin talked about that on that live stream. He's like, you receive this package, and it just, because I can't even imagine sitting in a bunker in the middle of Afghanistan or wherever, and like I for a long time, and then bam, you get this package, and I think it could really boost some spirits. So I think it's a good cause.
Here's my impression of Justin right here. Here's my impression of Justin. Justin, you're going to appreciate this. Here's Justin going, man, I am seasicker than a dog, but I got my beef jerky from home.
Oh my God.
We love you, brother.
The cost per box, Charles, it's $125 a box. So, yeah.
Which is just a
$125.
little bit more than Girl Scout cookies per box. They're very similar.
Yeah. He's laughing his freaking butt off.
Oh, Justin liked that. He liked that impression of him.
Yeah.
So funny. He was saying, we get toilet paper, we get toothpaste, toothbrushes, and we just, we get it all. We love it all. We even share a toothbrush. A lot of us do because we're close. We love each other. It's a brotherhood over there.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's funny. Holy crap. So go over there. So that's a great segue into what we were talking about. Independence Day. And I love the fact that Scott is such a history buff.
He is.
I mean, he really is. Holy crap. So Scott, I want to ask, let's make this about the Ken and Glenn just drill Scott all night.
Well, as long as you keep it on the presidents, that's what.
Oh, well,
was it restricted to presidential?
Well,
I love history, but the presidents is where I know all the crazy trivia. But
I don't know how, you get into YouTube sometimes and you end up down these rabbit holes. You ever do that? Yeah. And so somehow I ended up on the history of Air Force One. And that's why I decided to watch the movie Air Force One last night, which Glenn is taken out very early in that movie, but it's a great movie. But, I saw that when JFK was assassinated, they, who was next? Johnson. And he refused to fly on that Air Force One. He used the backup Air Force One, but he had a doggy door installed on the backup Air Force One for his dogs. Do you know about his dogs, Scott?
Now, Johnson did fly home on the plane with Kennedy.
Yes,
yeah, with his body.
He had to cut away a section of the plane.
But I wasn't aware that Johnson flew the backup plane all the time. I had not heard that. But interestingly enough, there is no Air Force Two.
Right.
It's the same plane. It's just whoever's on it.
Right. Air Force One is a call sign. It's
right. So in other words, if for example, if President Trump isn't on the plane, but Mike Pence is, then that plane becomes Air Force Two. And a lot of people think that Air Force One is the actual plane. It's not, as you said, Ken. You're exactly right. It's the call sign.
Yeah.
It's the designation based on who's aboard.
Because at the end of the movie Air Force One, he gets on that whatever that plane was, and they said, I forget the ending line, but he says whatever their call sign for that plane was is now Air Force One because the president was on it. But anyway, the president had two Beagles. Johnson had two Beagles, and he had a doggy door installed in Air Force so they could come and go in and out and wander the plane. Yeah. I'm like, what the hell? Yeah. And he took them everywhere. Two Beagles called, and their names were him and her.
Ike and Tina. No,
and he would pick them up by their ears. And yes. Oh my gosh, remember that? There was this huge public outcry because, right. Yeah, he would pick them up, take their ears, and pick them up by their ears.
Oh my god!
Again, Ike and Tina.
Holy shit!
Yes.
Oh my! That's what I thought you were doing there, Scott. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but you know, I'm in Texas, so we know this about our Texas presidents. He had a third dog that would only eat cantaloupe. He was a melancholy. And yeah.
God, I need a drum set.
I know. Hey, I've got the sticks laying here. So
there you go.
So
let's talk about Independence Day, and let's go to the great, the one, the only, the inimitable Scott McCain for all knowledge while he looks left and right. Tell us about Betsy Ross. Tell us about, talk to us about Betsy, would you?
I saw this great cartoon, and it's hey Letitia, how are you? I saw this great cartoon, and it's Thomas Jefferson with a quill saying, "Oh crap, this is due tomorrow." That was great.
Oh my god,
that's beautiful, Scott.
Great.
Tell us about Betsy. Tell us what we need to know about the 13 colonies and July 4th, 1776.
Well, that is the date that the Declaration of Independence was signed. John Hancock, probably his signature is the most famous because he signed it so big and said, now King George won't need his spectacles to see this. But what most people really don't understand is, in a lot of ways, they were signing their death warrant.
Because
to claim independence was considered treasonous against the crown, against the British.
Yeah.
And so, signing it was a much bigger deal than I think what we originally think, because, they literally put their lives on the line to sign that as a declaration that we are not going to, be colonies anymore. So right. There is such a great appreciation. I mean, there's been so much talk about the differences between, those from Virginia and those from other states. And rightfully so. But at the same time, even if we can be critical of some of the signers, I think we also have to be appreciative of people who put their lives on the line for our independence. In many ways, they were with the Revolutionary War and everything else. But I mean, they were the ones who really put their lives on the line. And in fact, really none of them needed to do it, because none of them were paupers. None of them were, the lower class. They were all doing very well. And they ended up, many of them, because of how much they gave to the cause, or because of, many of them were killed in battle. That it did not. There was not a happy ending for a lot of them. Because of that.
I saw this. I'm gonna throw it up on the screen. I saw this yesterday somewhere. I thought it was hilarious.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, that's great.
Now, speaking of which, gentlemen, speaking of which, concerning the Brits, we'll give you guys a little test. Do you know what the HMS stands for on the side of a British vessel?
I've always assumed it's Her Majesty's ship.
That is correct.
And right, I assumed that, but didn't know that.
USS on
United
an
States
American.
ship. Yeah,
that's correct. And AMB on an Italian ship. That's my boat.
Oh my God.
You mentioned the paupers, right?
that's right.
You know that there was a whole segment of them who would only eat hot peppers. They were called the jalapeno poppers.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
yes. What an incredible number. 5 POWs, 12 out of their houses burned, 17 bankrupt. It's amazing.
Oh,
Wow.
This is regarding the Declaration?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Thank you, Jeffrey Wolf.
And if you haven't been to the National Archives, just that building, that houses the actual one of the actual copies of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. I mean, just to stand and to actually see that paper is unreal.
Scott, Brian from our studio audience has a question for you.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty traditional answer. I think you'd have to go with Lincoln because, in fact, don't you think circumstances make the presidency to some degree? I mean, Roosevelt in World War II or whatever, and it's hard to imagine any president that has faced more strife and challenge, than Lincoln. And you wonder what kind of world and what kind of nation we would be if he had lived to serve out his second term. Because that was part of the reason that Andrew Johnson got impeached, is because he had a very different approach to how the South was going to be treated than what Lincoln did, as you know. So it's a great question, and I mean, it's certainly one that you could talk and debate about a lot. But I think when you look at what he did and how he did it, when you looked at how he kept his calm and touch. I mentioned the Doris Kearns Goodwin book called Team of Rivals about how he reached decisions. And oh my gosh, I mean, his popularity was at zero for a significant part of his presidency, because early on the Union was having such difficulty and such trouble. And it's one of those really interesting Civil War facts that a lot of time in the early days of the Civil War, in some of the battles, why the rich folks would pack picnics and go sit on a ledge, a ridge to watch it, because the assumption was that the war was going to be over very quickly for the Union side. At least that was the perception in the North. Wow. And it didn't turn out that way. And so, here's a guy that, we look back now and we think he's such an incredible leader, and he was, but he did all of that at a time that there were not many people that believed in him either. And I think when you add that to the mix, it's pretty incredible what he did.
Wow.
We got more audience questions for
it was either him or Franklin Pierce.
Who's that?
Our most tragic president, I think. It was Franklin Pierce. He and his wife and family was going to the inauguration, and the crowds lined up along the way. And he was from Vermont, and on the train ride, his son fell out of the train, and the president-elect saw him run over by the train.
Oh, dear God.
And his wife basically never left, their bedroom the entire time he was in office, and he just never recovered and served a term and just went home.
Wow.
Really, really tragic. Yeah. And you kind of forget. I mean, these are, we see the pictures. These were people, flesh and blood, real people. Ernest, that was what Hancock said. He signed it so huge. He said, and that's so King George won't need his glasses to read it. It was just kind of a,
It was either that or possibly low self-esteem.
He said someday people are going to buy insurance based on this signature, and
with an overcompensation.
Here's a great question by Charles. Is it true that Washington could have become I thought that said become the king of the U.S. His choice to leave the presidency was iconic for the new country.
Absolutely true. Charles is absolutely right. I mean, there was discussions. I don't know it got so far as a formal offer, but there were discussions because he was the only person in a sense that could have united the states, right? Because, states viewed themselves very independently at that time. And Washington was kind of the one that could, that everybody could agree on. And because to entice him, basically, there was talk about making him king, but he said, no, that's why we fought this, so we wouldn't be under a king. And I think Charles is exactly right. If you think about it, it wasn't until 160 years later that there was an amendment, 180 years later, there was an amendment that limited a president to 2 terms. But it was all based on, in those early days, a president didn't serve more than 2 terms because Washington didn't. So there's no way I could serve longer than George Washington. And then after Franklin Roosevelt was elected for the 4th term, the amendment was passed saying that other than the currently elected president, no president can be elected more than twice.
So wait, I was literally getting ready to say, has there ever been a president serve more than 2 terms?
Roosevelt served 3 complete terms, was elected for the 4th, and then died in his 4th term of a cerebral hemorrhage. And there was a thing for Ronald Reagan is the one that broke the string. There was a thing called the 20-year jinx. And William Henry Harrison died in 1840, was elected in 1840 and died. That was the guy I was telling you about that died during his inauguration. 1860, of course, was Lincoln. 1880 was Garfield. 1900 was McKinley. 1920 was Harding. 1940 was Roosevelt. 1960 was Kennedy. Then Reagan was elected in 80 and was shot, but survived. And then, of course, we've had presidents elected in 2000 that survived, Clinton, and then here we are with another election in 2020. But the 20-year jinx really went from 1840 to 1980 before it was broken.
So maybe potential presidential candidates should review prime numbers, or what's the takeaway here?
Isn't that one of the weirdest coincidences that happened? And Harrison, as I mentioned, died of pneumonia. Lincoln was shot. Garfield was shot. McKinley was shot.
And who was pulled out of the bathtub because he was?
That was Taft.
Howard Taft.
William Howard Taft, the only president to be president and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. But Warren Harding was the guy I was telling you about, was the president I was telling you about from Ohio.
He's from Marion, Ohio, where I live.
Look at how excited Ken gets. Look
I know.
It has anything to do with it.
Did you know that? He campaigned from his porch. He basically never left. And so the Republicans would bring people to Marion, Ohio, and he would walk out of his house and speak on his porch. And it was called the Front Porch Campaign. And he basically never traveled. But his main qualification was he looked like a president.
Was his porch anywhere near a train track, or? No, I mean that seriously. Was it?
Yeah,
Get people.
I've never been to his house, but his house, you can visit his house to this day in Marion.
That would work better in the old days if there was a train track that ran nearby and they could shuffle people up and down the track.
Yeah.
This is one of the largest hubs in the entire United States and I don't know what it's called exactly, but there are so many, like you don't go anywhere in Marion without typically running into a train that's going to slow you down. Like there's more trains in this town. It's crazy.
Cool. Scott, while we're at it, tell us about Tippecanoe and Tyler 2.
Well, that's thank you for asking, because that has an Indiana aspect to
I
it.
thought it might trigger something.
Thank you. The Battle of Tippecanoe was near Lafayette, Indiana, and General William Henry Harrison won that big battle against the Native Americans, and he became a national hero, and so was elected president. And so he was known as Old Tippecanoe. And matter of fact, there was Fort Tippecanoe, of which he was the general there, and John Tyler was his vice president. So that's how the campaign slogan, Tippecanoe and Tyler too, started. And then he became the first president to die in office, and John Tyler took
over the presidency.
Yeah. And there was, interestingly enough, there was a big debate then because it never happened before. Was he acting president or was he president? And Tyler was one that came down very strongly and said, we'll take it to the Supreme Court, we'll do whatever, but I am the president of the United States. I am not the acting president. I am the president. And that set the tradition for all of the other times that the vice president had to take over. Interestingly enough, the 25th Amendment to the Constitution was written by Indiana Senator Birch Bayh, and it changed presidential succession in terms of, for example, Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, and it's basically known his wife basically became president because he wanted to maintain the office and she wanted to maintain the power. And so any documents or anything had to go through her, and she wasn't elected, and the vice president had no way to take over, and they just basically stonewalled it and blocked it, even though he was totally incapacitated and unable to serve. So the 25th Amendment creates provisions of what happens, for example, I mean, and I don't mean this disrespectfully at all, but it's when we look at the ages of both of the candidates that are running in 2020, what happens if someone develops dementia? What happens if someone tragically develops that? And that's what the 25th Amendment deals with. But until that, relatively recently in our nation's history, there was never a way to get somebody out of office. Well, thanks, Cindy. That's a font of useless information. Hey, yeah, Kerry, Kerry's right too. McKinley spoke off of his porch, and was a front porch candidate. So 2 Ohio presidents. So
Charles Coachman says, so who unanimously said, I'm in control now? And I would like to answer that one, Scott. Do you know the answer to that?
I do know, but go ahead.
I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it was former NBC meteorologist Willard Scott. No.
I love Willard was a pal too. Has been a pal, and
so who was it? Who was
one of the great moments of my life was with Willard Scott. It was Al Haig, who I think you're asking about, isn't it, Charles? When he was Secretary of State, he told the group, "I am in control now." Well, no, George Bush it's when Reagan got shot. And Al Haig was in the White House and Bush was someplace else. But Al Haig came in and said, I'm in control now. Well, no, you're not. If the president's shot and incapacitated, the vice president's in charge. But it was emblematic of the ego and the overstepping of.
So basically, all of this, I'm sitting here listening to this unbelievable amounts of
phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. But basically what you're saying is, since George Washington, we've basically had a bunch of egomaniacs in office.
I don't know. I mean, no, I wouldn't say that. I don't
think we've even seen that in our lifetime, Ken.
What's that?
I said I don't even think we've seen that in our lifetime.
What?
Well, isn't it interesting? I've always, I love politics. I mean, my degree's in political science. I've always loved politics. But, isn't it interesting the ego that it takes to run for president to begin with? To think that whatever the nation's problems are, I am the person that could lead us out of this. I mean, there is. So we want them to be humble, but.
This is just so I can shock our future guests, our late arrivals. Continue, Scott. This is good.
Well, I mean, it is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, we want our presidents to be humble, and we want them to be service-minded and servant leaders. Yet at the same time, you've got to have an ego to say, I should be president of the United States. You know what I mean?
Solution to all global problems.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have typically said the president of the United States is the most powerful person in the world. So to say, you know, I'm a peanut farmer from Plains, Georgia, but I should be the most powerful person in the world, I think is one of the most.
Are you talking about Carter now?
Yeah. It's
well, and
I've met 6 presidents, and he's the only one I ever met that didn't stand up to shake my hand.
I've got a brother who is getting ready to have his own beer come out during my
Billy Beer.
During my administration. My brother's going to invent a beer.
You know what?
Do you remember Billy Beer?
Oh, God, I used to collect beer cans. I had the big thing where you would stick the beer cans to the display. I don't even know how many hundreds of different beer cans I had, and I had Billy Beer. They were
hard to find. They were a collector's item.
I wonder how much a can of Billy Beer would go for now.
My God. Thousands.
No, one can.
Thousands.
A can.
Thousands. Guarantee it. Somebody on eBay.
Somebody look that up. Somebody look that up. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I know. Somebody go to eBay and look that up.
I'm there.
Oh.
Yeah, I want to hear. Craig Deswalt's with us tonight.
Hey, Craig.
He's in the audience checking it out. And Susan, did you see Susan's comment? You posted it. You said I would vote for any of you 3.
Aw.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Hey,
we appreciate
Ken. Hey, Ken. Couple $100.
Huh?
Couple $100. Is that
it?
He said 1,000.
Oh, he'd say 1,000.
One beer.
I said 1,000.
Okay, Glenn. Here's the deal. You get a 6-pack for $15. So I'll split that with you. Then we'll split the $2,000.
Is it really?
I told him I thought he was a little off.
Yeah,
$1,000.
6-pack of Billy Beer unopened. Oh wait, $9.11 shipping. So it's going to be about $25 to get it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Count me in just so I can have a 6-pack on my shelf.
Look at that.
I don't even drink beer.
Is that on eBay?
It's on eBay.
Wow.
This is kind of a rare thing to admit. Of my total beer consumption, I'm talking about beer specifically, probably in my life, maybe 10.
You're kidding.
Oh, geez.
That's a good
not
for
not a fan of beer. I never figured out the taste. And the only times I've enjoyed a beer is if it were in the middle of the summer and I was outside doing some kind of activity and the beer was ice cold.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about pulled out of an ice chest. It's not just ice, but it's the melted ice where it's sort of it's like a sea of water that's cold, and you reach deep in and your arm comes out frozen. That kind of cold. That's when I'll drink a beer. So maybe 10, maybe a dozen beers in my life.
Wow.
I'm just not a beer guy.
I used to do that a day.
My brother used to do a case a day.
I've done a case. Trust me.
A case. Yeah. And I looked at it one time. I looked at how many beers are in a case, and I went, "This can't be." And then I realized it can be.
Yeah.
And it was. But yeah.
Wow.
A boss of mine at small town radio, Scottsburg, Indiana, would come in the morning, and I mean, you would hear him come in at 9 o'clock, and the refrigerator door would open, and he was opening a can of beer, and it would drink from the moment he got there to the moment probably he went to bed, and that was always the scary thing, because one time I saw him and he acted so strange. And I said to somebody else that worked at the station, "Man, what is wrong with him?" And he said, "That's the first time you've seen him sober." It wasn't when I saw him drunk. It was that I'd always seen him. And it's such a, Ken, that's why I have such abundant respect for you. One of the many reasons why I have such.
That's why Ken's my hero.
Oh, shoot.
Completely turned his life around. He's another human being. Hey, can I piggyback on your patriotism and your historical awareness, Scott, because mine is so much more limited than yours, but I do know a little about our Pledge of Allegiance because it's always meant a lot to me. And you saw my post on Facebook the other night. But The original Pledge of Allegiance was written in 1892, and it was written by a guy named Francis Bellamy, who, by the way, you guys remember the actor Ralph Bellamy?
Mm-hmm.
Remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely no relation to him whatsoever. So in
I was ready for a Trading Places story there. And remember when he played the guy?
I love to cite when I'm telling people stuff. I love to cite what they think is going to be a correlation, and then go, yeah, no relation whatsoever. But that was in 1892, and then the Pledge of Allegiance was somewhat revised in 1923, and that was when they added the terms the flag. The original one was the flag, the original Pledge of Allegiance said my flag. It never made mention of the United States of America. That wasn't part of it. And then in 1923, they said the flag instead of mine, and they added of the United States of America. And that version of the pledge remained intact. I'm not reading anything right now, but I've done my work on this because I feel like there's so many answers to our own present dilemmas that are found right there in the Pledge of Allegiance. But in 1954, that's when Ike came along, Dwight David Eisenhower, and he revised it yet again and added the two words under God. So until Dwight David Eisenhower came into office, under God was not part of our Pledge of Allegiance either. And when I went back to review all these facts this week, it so inspired me that I immediately decided to bring forth my most readily available Dwight David Eisenhower appearance. So I shaved my head so that I could look like Ike. And that's been in place since the time I was born back in 1959. And, I was suggesting that a word we could stand to go back to study with our current dilemmas without being political about it. I really think we could go to our Pledge of Allegiance and look at this one word that really stands out right now, and the word is indivisible. Indivisible. And I'm thinking, man, oh man, have we gotten away from that.
Yeah.
And that if we would really think in terms of what does it mean to be indivisible? We've all heard the saying, and it's a very appropriate saying, united we stand, divided we fall. And I think that we're seeing evidence of that. And I think it's so powerful. So the revision that I would love to see, since we're in the habit with regard to the Pledge of Allegiance of making revisions, and I'm not joking about this, I'm not being clever or cute or coy. I really sincerely believe this, and I would welcome such a change. Since we have it mentioned under God, that's there, then what about all nations? All nations under God, indivisible. If you think about a world where all nations were indivisible, you've just arrived at global peace. You've just arrived at the absence of war. And it's just food for thought. I know that I very much have a global perspective on things. I don't think of us as elitists. I think of us as fortunate, right? I don't think we're better than anyone else in the world, but I do feel profoundly fortunate. And I have felt that every day of my life because I never had to get any papers to be approved here. My qualification for arrival in the US was parents that had intercourse who already lived here. That's what gave me membership into Club USA. So anyway, it was Francis Bellamy that was responsible for the original, and then Ike later added under God, and then we also added the flag of the United States of America instead of my flag, and to the Republic, which was part of the original. It did say Republic, but it didn't ever mention USA, which I found fascinating.
That is fascinating. I never knew that until I saw your show. It's
Wait a minute. You learned something from me about history?
Totally, completely. Yes, I never knew that.
Well, I'm just going to breathe in what that moment feels like.
Oh, man.
I was, this is completely off topic, but I'm good at that. I watched Air Force One, and your name, and I was looking through some other shows that popped up on my Fire Stick. I have one of the Amazon Fire Sticks, and your name appeared, Glenn. And so I scrolled down, listed all the actors in the movie, and I scroll down, and you could click on each actor. So I click on your name, and bam, you pop up in every freaking movie you've ever been in or TV show that's available on Amazon Fire Stick is there. And it's a lot, which I know you know that, but
and yet you found time to do the show. You should still be there reading it.
I know. It's crazy. It's paused. No.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool, actually.
Hey, what are our guests saying tonight? We got a lot of comments, and Robert's with us, Robert Brooker, who's always with us and always saying interesting things, and Samuel Sneed. We may not be better as people, but we have the best constitution of any other country.
Absolutely.
I agree.
That's beautiful. What other, do we have any other
Who posted it
patriotic comments?
earlier about, we were talking about Willard Scott and knew the trivia that Willard Scott was the first Ronald McDonald.
I just read that.
There it is, Wes Wyatt. Yeah, Wes, we got it on something else. But yes, Willard Scott was actually the first
Really?
Ronald McDonald.
Which entailed what? You mean like television commercials or personal appearances as well, Wes? What was the extent of Willard Scott's commitment to be Ronald McDonald, and was he contractually obligated to the McDonald's Corporation? I'd really be curious about that, because I don't remember. I mean, Willard in his day was somewhat rotund, and I mean that sincerely. I don't mean it in a derogatory manner, but I don't remember that Ronald McDonald was necessarily rotund in design. Was he?
This was very early in Willard's career. He was a disc jockey in Washington, D.C. looking
so he was slender then.
Yeah, was looking for extra cash. I mean, he was a big guy, but he wasn't, as rotund as he was later in his life. He's still alive. I don't mean that to sound wrong. And so he, like a lot of disc jockeys, a lot of stations looking for ways to make a little extra money. And a local McDonald's franchisee had an idea about a clown.
Wow.
Back in the Ray Kroc days, when they were encouraged to, what could you do to innovate and to get people in? And so he put on the clown suit, became Ronald McDonald, did appearances in Washington, D.C., did commercials. The McDonald's Corporation loved it. And they took it, the ad agency took it global or national at that time. But Willard was not cast as, the Ronald McDonald on national, but he was the first person and kind of created the character of Ronald McDonald.
So how long did he run with that gig?
Probably a year and a half, I think, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just absolutely love.
But then he became the weather person for WRC in Washington. And then from that, morphed into the Today Show.
George Carlin was a DJ right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at one point in his career.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild, the stuff that we learn about.
Oh, his bit about, the guy, what was his, Al Sleet, the hippy dippy weatherman, forecast for tonight, dark.
Hey man, I'm Al Sleet, the hippy dippy weatherman with tonight's forecast. I used to love this one when he would go, "Hi gang, Scott Lame here, the boss jock with a boss list from the boss hits with my, hi gang, Scott Lame here, the boss jock with the boss hits from the boss list that my boss told me to play. Right here from the 5850 wonderful Wino Radio, wonderful Wino, the big town in the big sound. Wino time, bing bong, 5 minutes past the big hour, 5 o'clock. I love it.
Oh man!
And didn't you say you worked with him?
And what's that?
Didn't you work with him?
I didn't work with him. I knew George. I did not, when we were friends, which is really, really cool.
That's awesome.
Yep, that's him. What was the other guy? He was a news anchor, and he said, "This just in: ICBMs are heading towards our city, so there won't be an 11 o'clock news tonight."
Jeez.
Or something like that. It was, his bit about why is, and this to me is the brilliance of George Carlin when he said, "Why do we park in the driveway and drive on the parkway?"
Yes.
And I'd never thought about that before. George Carlin had this ability to see these things that we see every day.
They're right up under our nose, and we miss them.
And catch it was he's just amazing, just amazing.
Wow.
So, how did everyone spend their 4th of July yesterday?
We're talking to the audience, right?
Yeah, our audience. What did you guys do? We had a very low key one, and then we finished. And then I've got an announcement to make. But we finished watching Ozark, which we started binging. I was a little late aboard the Ozark train, but all of my students, my acting students, had talked about it, and so many people said it's such a beautifully crafted show. And so about 10 days ago, I watched my first episode of Ozark, and they do 10 episode seasons. So we watched all 3 seasons this week, and we finished it up about 4 o'clock in the morning last night. And it doesn't make for a good sleeping pill.
The way that season ended, did you just drop right off to sleep after that?
It is one of the most powerfully acted shows in history. I thought the acting on that series was phenomenal. It is not for the squeamish, and be prepared to swallow large amounts of immorality, because that's, the show basically attacks everything that is precious. But I'm not looking at it from that angle. I'm looking at it from how believable the acting is and how beautifully it's shot. And my God, the cinematography on this show is through the roof. It reminds me a lot of the series I did for the same network for Netflix called Bloodline, and also A Dark Show. And it's interesting, there's a correlation often between the relative darkness of a show thematically and the actual darkness with regard to lighting that they use to shoot the series, because it lends itself to imply a feeling of gloom and doom. If it's shot with bright lighting, it's just a little bit too upbeat for what it is. So that whole series, Ozark, is shot in a very dimly lit way, as was Bloodline. And I want to salute.
I haven't seen Bloodline.
The makers of that show. You've never seen Bloodline?
No, I need to go.
Dude, you have
Great
never.
show.
Yeah, I played the drug lord on the show, and it is I'm not a nice man in that show. And when it was airing, it's still on now, but at the time it first came out and so many people were watching it, people would stand away from me at the grocery store, and that's how I knew we were doing our friggin' job. Like, kids, get back over here, kids.
Get away from
the man. Get away.
Jason Bateman, what an interesting career, don't you think? Here he was he was playing second fiddle to his sister for so many years.
Not anymore.
Oh my gosh, his ability to do comedy. Have you seen Horrible Bosses?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
He's hilarious in that, and then to turn around and do Ozark and to do them both so incredibly well, and he's executive producing Ozark and directing some of the episodes, and
and they just got picked up for a 4th season.
Yeah,
and they're doing 14 episodes,
and ending it right. They said this is the end.
Yes, it's a 4th and final season.
Yeah.
Speaking of final, we had a significant death in the industry this week when Carl Reiner passed away.
Yo, gosh, yes.
And just really want to just say thanks to a life well lived and a huge contributing presence to show business, to comedy specifically. And I'd be curious what that brings up for our audience. How many of you even know the name Carl Reiner? And I remember first becoming aware, Scott and Ken, of Carl Reiner back in the Dick Van Dyke Show days.
Wow.
You guys remember him back then?
Oh, of course. Have you seen the pilot? It's on YouTube. But there was a pilot shot where Carl Reiner is the lead character.
Really? At what age in his career?
It was before the Dick Van Dyke Show, because he had the idea about a pilot for a comedy writer, and it is everything that they're Rob and Laura and everything, and it just doesn't work.
What can you show us here, Ken? Well, you're not doing that, are you, Scott? That's Ken that's doing that?
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Yeah, he made it to the ripe old age of, I think, 98.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is great. Either 97 or 98.
It sounds terrible, but I didn't know who he was. I mean, I recognize him.
And
yeah, so his son. Did you ever watch All in the Family?
Yep.
So if you'll scroll back up, you'll see pictures of him with his son who played Meathead.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Rob. Right? Rob Reiner?
Rob Reiner.
Oh, yeah, there.
Who is a great director.
Yeah.
And
have you ever worked with him, Glenn?
No, I have not.
Oh.
But certainly a very sought after director, even
an
actor these days.
Yeah, so many great films. It's called Head of the Family. If you want to check it out on YouTube, was the pilot that with Carl Reiner in the lead that didn't work, and then he realized if he cast Dick Van Dyke in that role, it would work, and obviously it did.
Are we the only talk show on the air currently that will go from doing a fundraiser for the military to talking about presidential fun facts to now discussing Carl Reiner and his early day pilots? What's tonight's hit parade? Hey, Scott, it's 11 minutes after the hour when every week
it's our time that we say, ooh, that's just wrong.
What was yours this week, Scott? Or Ken, if Scott needs to go into the think tank?
I need to think for a second.
Ken, do you have one?
I was thinking about this earlier today, and I think that I am so focused on positivity. I just don't see things wrong, man.
Allow me to bridge the gap.
Maybe
this is an area of healing where you can simultaneously see something as, ooh, that's just wrong. But when you're saying it, you're not wounded as you say it. You're actually smiling. And that brings me to the one I witnessed, which was very much wrong and very much funny and very much happened 3 days ago. I am having lunch with my friend Yasmin. And I called you during the lunch, Ken, remember?
Yep.
And so after I hung up, here's what I didn't tell you. I pay for the lunch and the waiter brings me the check, the change and everything. And I took back, I was following this pattern of generosity. And in order to support my generosity, it was very windy that day, and a huge gust of wind took the folded thing, flipped it open, and sent the tip up and over the fence out into the lake.
Oh my God.
And there was this cash. There was this cash on the water, and I'm just looking at it, and the ducks are quack, 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 and there's not like they can do anything with it. And I immediately went, ooh, that's just wrong. That I'm getting this heavenly support for being generous, and the wind shoots it out, which gives me yet another opportunity to repeat what I had already done. And here's the way I thought about it that made me smile. It's a truth. The wind was carrying away from shore and out to the other side of the lake. The money was irretrievable, and that was clear. It's not like there's going to be some net or anything. And it's probably going to be a good 30 to 45 minutes before it washes up somewhere on the other side of the lake. And I thought, what a great find for a fisherman. What a great random moment for them to be reeling in and going, this bass comes with cash. It's terrific. So I think that we don't have to find something wrong and feel awful about it. I think we can smile and be happy and, to use your word, celebrate positivity while identifying it as still wrong.
Okay. Well, I have one. I was on Instagram scrolling through. I think I was watching Scott on there or something. And
Scott's Instagram.
and a video. No, I was just scrolling through Instagram, and a video pops up, and it's one of those videos that says viewers may find the subject matter disturbing. Click to watch, and so it was like grayed out, and I'm like, I can't not watch it now. Like, what the heck? It's like clickbait or something. So I click it, and this is a sore subject, but it was somebody, a group of young people burning the American flag, and yesterday on Independence Day. And I thought, man, that is just wrong. Just wrong. I mean, that's my opinion, but I think and they were chanting, America was never great. America was never great, or something like that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can leave. that's right. My first thought. But
have
anyway,
you looked up the word idiot in a dictionary?
Yeah, it was some guy burning an American flag.
I mean, it's a certifiable condition that exists in the world. And all I can say is, one, go try living somewhere else. Good luck. And also, there was a whole lot of preparation done for your young arrivals. A lot of preparation that preceded the big welcome mat that you entered upon, my young friends. Please don't ever forget that.
That's right.
I mean, lives were lost so that you could know the ease with which you live. That's a fact.
And it's just a symbol, man. And I really, and look, the positive side to it, it makes me want to vomit to even say that. But the positive side is those little assholes get to live in a country that will actually allow them to do that. Because if you lived in Iran, if you lived in Iran, or if you lived in one of the Saudi Arabia, try doing that in Saudi Arabia. let me know how that works out for you. So, I guess that's the positive, if there is one. They do have the freedom to do that. So
that is just wrong, Ken. Yeah. I agree with you. And it isn't the flag itself. It's not the physical flag. It's the symbolism.
Yeah. It's all the people who died for it, man. We all three of us, and everybody watching right now that is in the United States, lives in the United States, is from the United States. We have people in our bloodlines that died to protect our freedoms, including being a jackass that goes out and sets the flag on fire. But anyway.
Well, we're going to probe you for how you really feel, Ken. You're wearing it pretty much right on the surface. Scott, what was that's just wrong? What did you come up with?
I had one kind of similar to Ken, but since that was mentioned, I have this friend, and he started a conversation with me wearing a cap. And then he pulled that cap off.
The big reveal.
I'm kidding. I love it, to tell you the truth. I think you look great. Yeah, I was doing my July 4th show. I do a little thing called Daily Distinction every day at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, and was doing it on the 4th of July. And somebody, comments popped up on Twitter, Periscope. And the question was, how many years have we celebrated the 4th of July? And I said, well, it's one less than people normally think, because obviously they didn't celebrate it on July 4th, 1776, right? They signed the document. And then it went into a discussion of some of the negative parts of U.S. history, and there was a hashtag about something the fourth.
Oh, yeah.
It just, but then I stopped and think, something. I remember that the older segment of the baby boomers used to protest and say, don't trust anyone over 30, and all you can hope for I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're three white guys sitting here talking about things they expect three white guys to sit here and talk about. And we have tried to bring diversity, and we have brought. I'm not saying we have brought diversity on the show, but I think they're not going to listen to us.
I think we brought diverse thinking on the show within ourselves.
I hope so. Yes,
not only just diverse guests, but I think that all three of us are capable of expressing diversity in thought.
Totally agree.
That's what I find you gentlemen. That's why I find you so stimulating, to be honest.
My point is not that we don't do that. My point is that somebody that thinks in that manner would not be open-minded enough to listen to insight.
Got it.
Well, I think, and you guys,
nice experiences and whatever shows them a different way.
You guys know this, though. I mean, when you were 20 years old, when you're 20, even 25, 30, I mean, life progressively changes. The way we view life changes, I think. It has for me significantly. And there was a time when I was 15 years old, I was 100% convinced that I was going to be in the next big Kiss rock group. Like I was going to be, and looking back now, I think I should have been.
What was fueling that, Ken?
Just the time. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I don't know, but the people I was hanging out with and whatever. But and it was short lived, probably only a year or two. But I think as we get older, at least for me, as I've gotten older, my view of God, my view of the world, my view of everything has changed. And I'm not saying it's for the better necessarily. I think it is. For me, it is for sure. But I think that, those kids that are, 21 years old, still living in their mom's basement, but they're going out and protesting and setting the freaking flag on fire. Hopefully someday life kicks them in the ass enough that someday they go, I actually appreciate my freedoms today. Today I actually appreciate being a U.S. citizen and the freedoms that I have that the people that fought for that flag have given me. So I think it shifts. I don't know.
There's a really interesting and kind of scary book that was released about a year and a half ago, and it's called The Coddling of the American Mind. And it is on how we have thinking that, if you would ask my dad his purpose, one of his purposes was that my kids will have had a better life than I had, because his dad wanted his kids to have a better life. But I think that we have been so successful at that we are to the point that in some situations we have coddled to the point that we have taken away responsibility.
Yep. We've
taken away decision making. We've taken away,
incentive.
I got bullied as a kid. It's part of it. It was a learning process, right?
Right.
Learning process. It was part of, what's made me who I am today, for better or worse. We try to make it so easy. It's interesting. There was a study done a while back, and it was trying to analyze the differences between Japanese parenting and American parenting. And Japanese parents wanted their kids to be successful. American parents wanted their kids to be happy. And I think that says a lot when you really drill more deeply into, if you want your kids to be successful, you want them to learn and pay the price and do the hard work and make things happen, because that will ensure their success later on. If you want to be happy, you buy them a new Xbox.
Right.
Yeah, but we've discussed this on the show before. There is no elevator to the top. So make them walk the stairs, because as they walk the stairs to the top, they will appreciate what that pattern of escalation means. That's how we build emotional infrastructure. Robert said something here about setting aside alcohol. Go ahead, Ken. You were going to say something. We can get to
I love what Mike Phillips says here. You know, I can remember in middle school, and I'm not saying this isn't a right or wrong thing. You know, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I pay her an allowance based on performance of she has to do the dishes, make sure the kitchen's clean every night. That's one of her responsibilities. And she came to me. We just started doing this. She came to me Friday evening after she finished the kitchen, cleaning up the dishes and stuff. And she said, "Daddy, I've worked all week, done the dishes every single night. Can I have my allowance now?" And she's got, we got her the little debit card. And I said, "Well, let me go inspect your work." And she goes, "Why?" And I go, "Because that's the way life works. I'm going to inspect your work. And if the job is done properly, you'll get your allowance. If it's not, you'll have the opportunity to make sure it's done properly, and then you'll get your allowance." And so I go out, I look, it's beautiful. I said, "All right, you get it." And the sense of, because, up until this point, it's been like, "Hey, I want this," and we got it for her. Well, I just recently said, she needs to start earning. She needs to start earning, and she needs to start learning that you got to work for what you want in life. Like, right. It's not going to just be handed to you. And so I transferred the money over to her debit card. She had a sense of accomplishment and pride, and I saw it in her eyes. She gave me a hug. It chokes me up even talking about it, because it's like, man, we're giving too much. Who was it? And Scott, I think you would know. Glenn, you might too. Who was it that said the greatest disservice we do to our children is to steal away their hunger?
That was Al Roker.
I thought it was Dan Rather.
Eachman, but I wasn't.
Was it Shakespeare or somebody way smarter?
I don't know that quote, but I love it. That's a brilliant quote, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the worst things we do to our children is give, and like Mike said, Mike Phillips. No, you're not allowed. Nobody's allowed to be punched in the face anymore.
And you think with his father being the captain of a ship. I mean, that's a really interesting conclusion to arrive at,
Oh my God. That is so funny.
Renee Rose has posted a couple questions to me, and
that's my sweet long-term friend from Vancouver.
No kidding. And it is about it's something I'm aware of, but Renee, I apologize. I'm aware that the proclamation was debated. It was the first time the British Crown recognized Native peoples, but it was also viewed by some as being horrific for those Native peoples. And there is a great debate about that. And I need to look into that more, because I just know that there's controversy about that. And I'm so respectful of Canada. And matter of fact, that's how I started my thing on July the 4th. Did we really need a declaration? I mean, you think about it, Canada's doing just great. Australia's doing just great. What is it that's so uniquely American that, unlike the Canadians and the Australians, we felt that we had to break all ties? Not complained about it, but I mean, I just think it's interesting that we think, that is the natural course, when it's not what Canada did. It's not what Australia did. There's a lot of countries that, did just fine without it. But boy, it kills me when you see people disrespecting what's made the nation so great.
Renee, thank you for chiming in with that. Ken, I had a thought about something you mentioned earlier, and all I wanted to offer the audience was this: when you were talking about remaining positive and so forth, and you saw something that was alarming to you. It was certainly concerning to you. It saddened your heart. And I think that in general, whenever we see anything that's off-putting, it's important to not let it get us down. That if someone else is doing something that we find unacceptable, our job is to remain who it is we are at all times. Just remain who it is that we are and keep our side of the street clean. I don't feel like I'm telling you something you don't already know. I'm really just reminding all of us that I think it is very easy to succumb to an energy of the people we're observing, right? And the term for it is being chameleon-like. We talk about this extensively in the acting profession, that we become equivalent to that which we hang out with. I mean, Jim Rohn talking about the 5 people. It's the same thing. So we need to find a way where we can observe behavior without absorbing behavior.
Yep.
And I think that that's part of good, healthy boundary setting, where I'm going to observe this, I'm going to learn from it, but I'm going to do so without becoming it.
Yep.
Right? Especially if you feel like you're in a healthier modality, vibration wise, that if you feel like your life is much more centered and it's working and you're happy and you enjoy occupying your sack of skin, then just observe and take notes. But above all, don't let it break your heart. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it ruin you, and don't let it contaminate you so that there is a lesser version of you that now recirculates itself into the world.
I agree. Did you see what Mike wrote here?
Oh, wow. He in fact retired from the police force as Captain Philip. Wow.
Very cool.
That's beautiful, Mike.
He says, I know it's not the same. I got the reference.
Thank you. It was purely
Mike's a great guy,
no other reason. No other reason.
Yeah, I agree with you, dude. I think, I mean, I see that, and I mean, look, my first gut reaction is it pisses me off, and it makes me want to go slap the snot out of somebody. But you know, then I get over it and move on. But we had to bring up something that's just wrong, so I thought I'd bring it up. So.
It isn't the best advice you can get with that. It's don't feed the trolls.
Yeah.
Well said.
You know, just don't feed the trolls. It gets me. And by the way, I want to make sure if you watch what I talked about it, I didn't mean that in terms of disrespect about did we need the revolution. I meant it's part of what's so uniquely American is our independence, and the independence to say, you know, what you think and do all that. But nonetheless, in social media has brought out the absolute worst in so many people, and we got to just don't feed the trolls. Just don't. And I'll bet you can. You know, you look at whoever did that, and they've got 13 followers.
Right.
You know,
right.
One for each colony.
Yeah. All right. Hey guys, we're about out of time.
We are out of time.
Hey, before we go, I swear it'll only take like a minute, maybe 1 minute. Do we have one more minute? I see so many people that, you know, that study with me and people that write in about the subject of depression, which I take very seriously. And I just want to offer you this. I understand that some people do need medication. This is not said as a joke, by the way. I really mean what I'm about to say. Some do. It becomes a medical requirement. But for many, I would caution you not to have medication be the first thing you reach for. But this week, you might want to reach for some silliness. I do it every single day of my life. I have recommended so many times that actors who have not been pleased ever with a headshot, that they go take their new round of headshots. The next time they go do them, I encourage them to go stand in 2 pans of Jell-O. This is not a joke. To roll up their pant legs and to watch the effect it has on their entire being. Even though we don't see the Jell-O, it's out of the frame, it's below frame, but we do see the effect of the Jell-O. So do you know that most every day, not every day, but most every day, not only do I sing in the shower, but can you go back to the 3 image of us? Because I want to look at Scott specifically when I share this. I sing in the shower. I go back to 1965, did it this morning, did it yesterday, did it Friday. I probably did it 6 of the 7 days. this week. But in the shower, I'm warming up my voice going, doe, a deer, a female deer, ray, a drop of golden sun. Me, a name I call myself, far a long, long way to run. So, a needle pulling thread, la, a note to follow, so. Tea, a drink with jam and bread, that will bring us back to do, oh, 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 do, re, mi, and so forth. And I got to tell you, 100% money back guarantee, and I'm not charging for this. You will not be in the mood you were in before you started singing that song. You have put no bottled medication in your body. You've just chosen to address your feelings differently. That's all it is, just differently, in an organic manner. And for some of you, you are quick to fold your arms and judge it. This sounds like insanity. And what I want to tell you is I'm okay with you calling it insanity. I really am. No offense taken. But I will add that it is insanity that works. My students practice it all the time. Just doing little silly things, getting around making faces like this and so forth, and just having fun, just because you can. And walking into places and pretending to be drunk off your butt and see how long it takes someone to throw you out. Or try to go into a bar and just see if you can get another cocktail, just to see if they're going to draw a boundary. I love stuff like that, but I'm sure that's why I'm an actor. Anyway.
Love that.
My pal Dwayne Allen, who is the lead singer of the Oak Ridge Boys, just sent me a joke. Can I?
Yes, do it.
Read this? The Pope met with his cardinals to discuss a proposal from Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of Israel. Your Holiness, said one of the cardinals, Mr. Netanyahu wants to challenge you to a game of golf to show the friendship and ecumenical spirit shared by Jewish and Catholic faiths. Well, the Pope thinks it's a good idea, even though he's never held a golf club. Could we have a cardinal represent me? The Pope asks. Well, certainly, that's acceptable. But we don't have any cardinals that play very well. However, there is a man named Jack Nicklaus, an American golfer who is a devout Catholic. We can make him a cardinal, then ask him to play Mr. Netanyahu as your personal representative. In addition to showing our spirit of cooperation, then we'll also win the match. Everyone agreed a substitute was a good idea. The call was made. Nicholas is honored and agreed to play. The day after the match, Jack Nicklaus calls the Pope. I have some good news and bad news, Your Holiness. I always love good news. Said Nicholas. Tell me the good news first, Cardinal Nicholas, said the Pope. Well, Your Holiness, I don't like to brag, but even though I played some pretty terrific rounds of golf in my life, this is the best I've ever played by far. I must have been inspired by above. My drives were long and true. My irons were accurate and purposeful. My putting was perfect. In all due respect, my play was miraculous. What's the bad news, said the Pope. I lost by 3 strokes to Rabbi Tiger Woods.
Oh man!
Oh,
all I can say is that joke was just placed into the hands of a master. Scott McCain at the helm. A lesser man could not have pulled that joke off.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Oh,
With that, will you take us out, brother?
Let's head to the house.
that's awesome.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This has been the July 5th edition. We'll see you again next Sunday for the next show of the Ken and Glenn Show with a guy named Scott. See you then.
See you guys.